This forum is organized by the Habibie Center with the kind support of TETO. Without further ado, we would like to invite our moderator for today, Dr. Rudi Sukandar, Associate Fellow of the Habibie Center, to come to the stage.
Thank you very much. I think as the opening, I would just like to point out that we got issues on post-truth, disinformation, and echo chamber effect. In relations to the freedom of expression. I think one of the latest survey released by Lembaga Survey Indonesia, I would like to just share with you. One of the things that was mentioned in the survey is that is related to the media. The first one is how free or uncensored by the government Indonesian media is. And the answer to that question was actually 19% of the respondents said that Indonesian media are not free. 19. And then what's really interesting is another source that information that I cited was about the civil freedom condition. It was a survey done by SMRC on May-June 2019. The question is on, now people are afraid of talking about politics. So are people afraid of talking about politics? And 26% of the respondents says never. They are never afraid of talking about politics. 26%. Quite a good number actually, but if we compare that to the previous surveys, then is actually decreasing, because in July 2014, the number who answered never was actually 40%.
Hello, everybody. How are you? I know normally sessions after lunch is a bit of a challenge, as everybody can get quite sleepy. But thank you, Rudi, and also thank you for inviting me to be here. And I was quite excited to be part of this discussion, because this is something that not just here in Indonesia, when we talk about the digital technology, social media, but it's a global phenomenon. And as somebody who sort of cut her journalistic teeth during the New Order period, I started with RCTI back in 1990, and I'm pretty sure most of you weren't even born yet. So it's interesting that you come up with, say, 19% believe that, you know, we're not free, and 26% says we're not free to talk about politics. Well, I mean, if we turn back the clock, I mean, Indonesia is, from 2020 hindsight, we are one of the, we enjoy the greatest freedom of the press, especially when we're talking about this part of the world and compared with our neighbors. So this is something that we should be grateful for. We got it since the Reformasi back in 1998, and our beloved President Habibie then actually opened the tap, reversing over 30 years of censorship and authoritarian approach to the press, where we didn't even know the meaning of the word freedom of the press. And now we are enjoying that, and perhaps some of these concerns are basically an example of an excess of what it is like to have too much freedom. And I think this is something that we need to be aware of, that democracy is not a given. I know most of you are born thinking that, yes, we can all say whatever we want. And especially if you're digital natives, you know, everything is, you take everything for granted, but it's not. So it can easily be taken away. And so this is, I think my message also here, this is something that we really, really, all of us need to take care of. And we see in many parts of the world that democracy is being threatened because of that. But going back to the title of discussion about disinformation and the freedom of expression. Now, of course, you know, when I started, everything is analog, and information is basically top down. If I speak on television and read the news, no one's going to sort of, you know, question me on the veracity of what it is that I'm telling them. Or if you read the newspaper, you take it for granted that what is written is more or less the way things are, and you are representing the voice of the truth. Now, Indonesia, since the advent of the internet and the rise of social medias like Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, and all these chats, and we are now, I mean, they say that Jakarta is actually the Twitter capital of the world. We are one of the top 3 users of Facebook. People now, we talk, even when we're in the same room, through WhatsApp. I mean, we don't, you know, we have conversations. Everything is done through the social media. Disinformation is, I think, the impact of disinformation in Indonesia, it was biggest felt during election times. And I think this happens around the world, where elections, of course, is a means of trying to get people to vote or choose in a certain way, or vote or choose a certain candidate. And during the first 2014 election, when it was the Jokowi against Prabowo, I think that was the first time when we really feel as a society the impact of so-called disinformation. And we've seen how, for example, black campaigns, smear campaigns about particular candidates, and it has an impact not only politically, but socially, and in the way that people choose their candidates. Now, what we have to also see when we talk about disinformation, I mean, I see a lot of good things going on in the internet. People mobilize, I mean, other than the cat videos, you know, which is always funny, but the people can mobilize for the good, can do things together. But the disinformation, especially when it comes to during election time, if you look, who are actually the people behind these disinformation? Actually, a lot of the time, you know, this is just not the ordinary you and me, but the campaigners, maybe the supporters of a particular candidate or a political party. So these are people with agenda. And they use cyber armies, for example. They use trolls. And sometimes there's this, you know, they're paid to do these things. And a lot of them are maybe affiliated with the particular political parties. So we also need to understand the nature of the disinformation that is being particularly churned out during election times. Actually, during the 2019 election, 45% of the stuff that is being put out on Facebook is actually about politics. So this is something we also need to watch out for when we talk about disinformation, is what sort of disinformation, you know, whether this is true or not, and get the fact checkers out there and just basically creating a resilient society, because otherwise the opposite to that is, okay, let's switch it off once for all. I mean, this is what I do, you know. Go on an internet fast for just 1 or 2 days, and you'll be amazed how much more peaceful your mind is when you're not constantly logged on.
And Siberkreasi, let me explain a little bit about Siberkreasi. Yes, Siberkreasi is a movement. It's formed because of the raising of the hoax and disinformation, especially when the election times in Indonesia. So the other side of the coin of that is giving like motivation and awareness to the people, to the government, to the community, to the organization to do something about it. And then we formed the Siberkreasi. Siberkreasi is now like we are now moving to the 3rd years. And then we already have a lot of activities from Sabang to Merauke. We have already, do we have the slides for that? No? We have already 460 activities and more. And we already have audience around We reach our audience around, let me see, 194,000. Also, our book of digital have been downloaded from it is from 182,000. So it's quite activities, and we hope by doing this we can also make the Indonesian more wise when they play social media or internet. But you know what I'm saying? Some of my friends is artist management. They tell me that, you know what, Yosi, nowadays there is a haters management. Because your haters someday will become your fans, will become your true followers, things like that. So because of that, it's become more hard for us to, you know, to spread the positive content. We have to, you know, fight all the content like that. I'm not gonna say all of it is negative, but it's just not educate or bringing you anywhere. I'll giving you an example of viral content. Okay, this is what viral. The viewers of 10 hours is 91 million. 91 million. Even they make it for 24-hour edition, the viewers still 5.9 million, 6 million people. This is what they like. Okay? This is what they like. So if we, the content creator of Indonesia, in terms of we want to, can you turn it off? Because it's hypnotizing some of the people here. So if we want to like educate people, we want to like motivate all the content creator to do this, like making a social positive content, it's gonna be hard because it's not attracted at all. For the industry, that is not attracted at all. But it's the thing that we can do, and we must do it. That's why I said the other side of the coin, when we see the political issues is raising in Indonesia, it gives us motivation. It gives us reasons. We need to do something about it. We cannot just lay back because we're not living in this country for ourselves. There is a generation after us that need to live a country. I have a son, so I don't want him to live in a chaos, to live in a country that's full of hates. I want him to live in a country that's full of loves. That's our job. You know, what we've been doing in Siberkreasi, yes, we educate, but we're also making content. If you think that you cannot do anything about this country, you're wrong. You can. And then things like this, you can share it. You can share it to anybody else. Cameo Project sent to London because we are an ambassador for, they call it, YouTube International chooses us for an ambassador for Creator for Change program. And one professor from UK, he used to be a Syrian, and he becoming a UK and work in the government at the de-radicalization department. He said to us like this, and it's a good thing, I think. What you guys been doing is already good. You're making videos that's inspiring others. But have you ever thought of doing more, like reaching out? And we asked, what do you mean by reaching out? Reaching out is like this. Do you have energy to talk to the negative comment? You choose which one is a cyber army and which one is that you can also have a good communication. Choose the one that you can have a good communication. The one that in their posts, in their feed, they have families, they have friends, they have schools, they have things like that. Talk to them. Tell them it's okay to have a different opinion or, you know. But tell them also one thing. We are one country. We are one nation. And I love you for that. So that's called reaching out. Like you put on a seed of not hatred, but love. That's what you can do, right? The things that we can do is like that. So be positive always and do things for our country. Don't just enjoy yourself right now. That's from me.
Okay, and then my presentation will be about data. First, I was so happy because what Desi said. That's also what I thought. The difficulty of the problem that we have, and also not only in Indonesia, not only in Singapore, in Asia, but also the whole world. The problem with disinformation. Okay, this is what me. So I have 50 slides, but usually I can make it only 20 minutes. No problem, depend on the time. So first I will start with the state of the disinformation, because we have to talk about that. What is the situation at this moment? And I would like to little bit introduce what happened in the Southeast Asia. I'm not the expert in that one, but I have some information I share to you. And the second one is about how the government have the efforts on it. And we want to evaluate a little bit the impact of the government approaches. And the last one is the conclusion. International concern, this one. About 3 months ago, I was in Kyoto. I was invited in a workshop, fake news and state control. So actually, this two words is very important: state control and fake news, and also the post-truth. And at that moment, I was one from Indonesia and other speakers from Singapore, Malaysia, Myanmar, and Thailand, and Philippines as well. And we share the problem that we have. And the last one, it was just last week. I was in RSIS, this is like CSIS of Indonesia. And you know, I was sitting beside Ross Tapsel, if you know what him. This one is Ross Tapsel on my left side, and my right side is the head of RSIS. And Ross Tapsel, he was refused to come back to Indonesia because some issues. I remember during the presidential election, he came to my office asking about some data, and then after that, he wrote an article in a newspaper, and because he is very critical, I don't know because of that reason or something, or maybe there are some other reasons, and he was refused to come back to Indonesia. And okay, these two things I will explain with data about the impact of how the government approach some things and the disinformation. Actually, we have three things: misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. We also have fake news. We use fake news because it is easy. Donald Trump used that, but we know actually inside the fake news, we should talk about disinformation and misinformation, these two things. Misinformation, you share it without you know it will cause harm. And disinformation, you have an intention to make something bad. And malinformation, yes, you have my information, for example, my private information, and then you share it. Yeah, the information not supposed to be public, but you make it. Okay. This is very easy for us to understand the differences. But for now on, maybe it's very easy for us to say, in Indonesia we use hoax. Very simple, just one word. In English they use fake news. And this is a global phenomenon. If you look at this, there are some references. It was since 2002, 2012, and until now. There are quite a lot of research have been done about misinformation and disinformation as well. What these references said is that actually, if we have misinformation or disinformation, it is very difficult for us to erase that. If you look at this one, the first in the chart is we have no misinformation, and in the middle, we have misinformation, and then we try to correct the misinformation. You can see that. We cannot go to the initial state. The initial state is like no misinformation at all. It is difficult. So once you introduce something, it is difficult and almost impossible to erase that. And what Desi said is really correct and can be explained in this graph. Actually, sometimes it's not about we want to tell the truth or not, but we just want to destroy, we want to manipulate the public mind. We want to destroy the conversations. Okay. We have talked about fake news and disinformation, but actually there's something more than that. This one, bias, propaganda. but Desi already said what propaganda before. And every day, for example, if it is not every day, we will find fake news. But every day, very easy, we can find propaganda. So we can find propaganda more often than fake news. And this also cause damage quite significantly. If you look at here, this is simply we just use Google Trend. Just try to look at the trend of people searching for hoax, propaganda, and fake news. This was presentation that I got from the RSI's workshop. It is very important, so I want to share it with you. In Prague, there's a group called Kremlin Watch. And what they are doing is they try to monitor Kremlin. Because, you know, Russia try to influence people, influence other countries around it. And Kremlin, they have 7 tools. They use 7 tools to influence other countries. The first one's like intelligence. They have influence operation. Do we have something like this in Indonesia? Is there any other country that try to influence us? If you remember, during the presidential election, there are some rumors because Prabowo visited Russia, then some, I don't know what we call it, hoax or something, that Russia will have Prabowo. Okay. Is that true? I mean, I asked the speaker because they make the presentation. Do you think that Russia also have influence operation to Indonesia? She cannot answer. She's not sure yet. But she was sure this happened in Europe. And then we have disinformation. We have political lies. They use NGO, radical extremist groups. They use part of ethnic minority. And they use economic operation. Probably some of these make us ring a bell. We remember, we know maybe something happening. So not all of them will contain fake news, right? Maybe they will contain something. But propaganda, they will use that inside this. Okay, the balance. I know this is difficult, but what I thought is that maybe there is something that we can do for the future. And what I thought is this. All what have been done by the government is try to make control, state control. If they have problem, they want to control it. If they have problem, they want to control the internet connection. They want to control, the problem might be they cannot control the mind. Again, the government tried to control our mind. They have buzzers, is that right? Okay, government has no buzzers. But there's buzzers, pro-government, okay. And then we have public, maybe some of them are containing buzzers. Not always buzzers, but maybe some critical persons. They want to criticize the government. But if you come, all of this in the internet, the situation now is that like noise. If we make a criticism, maybe if we want to say something bad, maybe what has been heard by the government or not heard by the government, because it's not yet until the government, but we have buzzers first. And what buzzers is noise. But if they hear noise, they will make another noise. Noise circulated like this. And this can cause hoax, propaganda, fake news, and very creative, right? And there's no such positive thing from this. But actually, behind this, we have what? Signal, right? In the conversation, there should be a signal. We have to do something like this. What the government should do is like this, actually, what I thought. The balance in the critics. Of course, if we have fake news or we make misinformation and disinformation, and if it is serious, we will face legal laws. But if we make critics, if we have good opinion or a suggestion to the government first should listen to them. Government listening to the critics. If we can do something like this, I think we'll give an impact to the public. Okay, I'm very happy. Finally, government want to listen us. I think actually this one in line with video. We want to share something positive, and what the professor he said, like we have to reach out, and the government have to reach out to its citizens, and listening to what citizens said, whatever it is, and it will give a motivation to the citizen to say whatever as long as it's positive. I think this one, we have the big data, we can help the government, We can help government, of course, but depending whether the government want to do that or not, right? Because these tools or system already there, in the Ministry of Communication, already in other ministry or something. But problem whether government openly, okay, we want to listen it and let the citizen know that what they criticize been listened by the government, and government is fine with that. So having different opinions not only between people, but between government and the citizen as well. Thank you very much. Okay, this is the conclusion, that disinformation is a real problem. The government try to make control, increasing state control, but the impact usually is not so successful, I think. Okay, thank you very much.
My name is Ahmad Sofwan. I'm from Universitas Indonesia. I would like to ask to Mbak Desi, based on the statement at the beginning of the talk, it said, the MC said that 90% Indonesian media is not free. Is that 90 or 19? Sure, 90. It's a big number. The question is, actually, is it difficult to for media to being free or independent? That's a short question, actually. Because maybe the situation, the media cannot being free, or maybe anything, any other reason.
Definitely, yes, it's getting more and more difficult. I mean, it's, for an independent or commercial media, it has always been quite complex, the position of the journalists, because particularly here in Indonesia, you have the ownership, of course. So the journalist is always under influence from, for example, the ownership of the media itself. And there's increasingly, I mean, one of the reasons why businesses, for example, go into the media is because they want to assert influence. So this gets even more complex, for example, during election time and so on, because there's political affiliations. And we've seen in how the last couple of elections, the media is under pressure. And then you can see, you know, who's the media owners, who's voting who, and trying to influence the public in order to choose a particular candidate, for example. And of course, there's, since we have a democracy, and it's a very noisy democracy, even more noisy now with the online, everybody can blog, everybody can produce their own versions. The way we consume and produce and disseminate information is actually a challenge for us, because we're at risk of losing credibility, and especially in an increasingly critical society, it actually endangers our existence as media. We have, you know, the media, the journalists being attacked, for example, and we're not talking about, I mean, under the new order, it was quite simple in a way. Everything is censored, so you cannot say what you want, basically, because there's a state. But now, with all of these different challenges, plus, of course, we have to compete in terms of businesses. And unfortunately, like in a country like Indonesia, where people tend to go for sensationalist news, there is this push to maybe exaggerate things or produce, yellow journalism, or that kind of, the clickbait and that kind of thing. So if you want to be a professional journalist, it is becoming much, much more of a challenge. Now, we at CNN Indonesia, especially, everything has to be now, speed, if you're not there first, then you're going to get left behind. But we find that after a while, it actually affects our credibility. So in CNN, we have a department called RASI, which is for Rights and Clearances, so that we don't take things from the internet and deliver it, because now we're also aggregators of news from the online and say, this is what's happening. First of all, we check and recheck. Where is the source? Is the image, somebody owns the image, and if somebody owns it, we try to buy the rights to get their permission, and we check the validity, the veracity of the images. Now you can manipulate. You change the video, you can cut, you can edit, you can even, now with AI, change the voices, and we don't know what's true and what's not true. So in a way, what we have to do in order to maintain credibility is we have to really go back to the fundamental aspect of our journalism. It's being professional, being independent, doing our homework, checking, rechecking, upholding our ethics, promoting an environment that is not conducive for bias, refraining from giving our opinions, because even a journalist is a human being. And
thank you very much,
thank you, our
Mr.
moderator as
Sukandar.
well.